Darth Vader's failures against Obi-Wan Kenobi alongside the banks of the magma rivers on Mustafar was one of the most disappointing moments in Emperor Palpatine's life. After all, he had spent decades manipulating the young Force-sensitive boy known as Anakin Skywalker in the hopes of pulling him in as his apprentice. By the time Anakin ascended to the Jedi Council, he was nearly more powerful than anyone in the Order, and with just a bit of Sith training, he should have been the greatest Force user in the galaxy. But he squandered it all. Vader's arrogance in the final moments of his duel against Kenobi didn't just cost him his limbs. Those could be replaced with cyborg enhancements easily enough. The cost was far higher. Vader's loss actually cost him his full potential in the darkside, including the ability to use Force lightning, which required organic arms to conduct the violent arcs of electricity. So, it came as a massive surprise only a few months after the duel on Mustafar, when Vader suddenly unleashed a torrent of violent, deadly, red Force lightning against Emperor Palpatine. How did Vader manage to summon the strength to project Force lightning? And why did his electrical arcs manifest themselves in crimson red bands? This is today's underrated moment. In the days following Padme's death, Vader only had one thing on his mind: bringing her back to life. He had only accepted Palpatine's proposition that he become the Sith Lord's apprentice so that Vader could unlock the secrets of immortality. All of his butching, from the bloody culling of the younglings at the Jedi Temple to the clinical murder of Master Jocasta Nu aboard the Imperial transport, was in service of Padme. But Vader was quickly discovering that Palpatine's promise of hidden wisdom wasn't easy to come by. Vader would need to create a powerful conduit at a darkside nexus and use it to open a portal to a world beyond his own. Thankfully, Vader knew a place where he could do exactly that. At the site of his greatest defeat, where the magma rivers of Mustafar's forked, Darth Vader commanded a Sith spirit known as a Darth Momin to construct a towering black castle, and in its basement, a shrine that served this universe's connection to reality, and opened a portal to another. Even Darth Sidious seemed to be perplexed by the nature of this other dimension. Perhaps the ancient Jedi of Tython who lived 35,000 years earlier might not have known. Was it a reality of pure dark side energy? Was it related to the netherworlds of the Force, where masterful Jedi like Qui-Gon Jinn or Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda could retain their consciousness after death? Nobody could be for sure. But in later years, when Luke Skywalker would spend many late nights reading the lore of Jocasta Nu's ancient records, he found hints of the truth. Darth Vader thought he was entering the afterlife where Padme's spirit might have been waiting for him. But Luke realized that Vader's only reality was actually chaos, the netherworld for Sith spirits that failed to pass peacefully into the Force. Vader wouldn't find Padme's spirit here. Instead, he'd find reflections of his own fractured soul scattered like ragged pieces of a broken mirror. And that's exactly what happened. After stepping through the portal and traversing a terrifying plane of memories that ranged from his own horrible childhood as a slave to his embarrassment at being rejected as a master by his fellow Jedi, Anakin discovered two people waiting for him. The only father figures he had ever known, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Sidious. The two dueled for the right to call Anakin their son, and in the end, this netherworld version of events mirrored what happened in real life. Palpatine won, and he reached his hand out towards Vader. But instead of the helping, friendly invitation that Kenobi would have offered, Palpatine instead threateningly held up his palm, implying that he would use Force lightning against Vader. Even in Vader's chaotic spirit world, the nature of his relationship with his new Sith master was as brutal as ever. Palpatine would use his superior power to keep Vader in line, to make sure that he never found the truth to kill Sidious. But this wasn't the real world. In this spiritual plane, Darth Vader's body was whole. His arms and legs had been fully manifested by the Force itself, which meant his potential as a Sith could be fully realized. Staring at the familiar sight of Palpatine's outstretched hand and realizing a blast of painful blue Force lightning was only seconds from shooting out, Vader put up his two new Force-imbued arms in response. and from both hands an entire storm's worth of powerful red force lightning leapt out. The bolts cut through every part of Palpatine's body, scorching the Emperor's skin with black marks where the electricity met resistance. After only a few seconds, Sidious's body, which was so powerful in the dark side, fell into a charred pile of ashes on the ground. This moment, the powerful red force lightning and Sidious's quick defeat leaves a lot of unanswered questions about Anakin's power. To be honest, many of these questions probably could never be satisfyingly answered, but we can try. First, we have to determine what the exact nature of this other dimension was. On one hand, it's tempting to think that this was just a part of Vader's own tormented mind, and the events that unfolded within have no bearing or reality. That would make sense, considering so many of the people within Vader's trip through the portal were simultaneously alive in other parts of the galaxy. But there's a problem with that. The Sith spirit who constructed Vader's temple was able to recreate his own physical body and walked out of the darkside dimension and into the real world in order to duel Vader. This means whatever was on the other side of the portal was a real place that any sentient being in the galaxy could walk in and out of, and not just a tool for an individual to access their innermost thoughts. If we take Momin's resurrection into account, it seems more and more likely that later interpretations of Jedi texts are most likely that the portal on Mustafar can actually access the netherworld realm of chaos. Unlike the netherworld that the Jedi occupy, chaos was fabled to be filled with the deceptions and phantoms. Whenever a Sith Lord failed to transfer their essence to a new body and fell to death in the physical realm, they were banished by the Force to chaos. There, like a never-ending fever dream, the spirits of darkside users were besieged with horrifying memories of their life, and every conflict that they had failed to resolve. Even if they saw someone they knew in chaos, they could never be sure it was actually the spirit of an individual, or merely a reflection of them from the banished Sith's own twisted psyche. Vader experienced this firsthand when he confronted Palpatine. It was obviously not the same version of Sidious who was sitting on Coruscant at the time. But one has to wonder, was the version of Sidious that Vader confronted in Chaos as powerful as the real one? We could never really know, but it's tempting to think that he was. And the same could be said for Vader's red lightning. Was it real? And was it powerful enough to reduce a Sith Lord to ashes within seconds? It is possible and likely that he was able to produce Force lightning within the realm of chaos because his body was made whole again in the Force. Much like our own physical world, the netherworld spirits could use the Force and actually trained in their abilities quite often. Yoda even accepted new students after death and trained them in the afterlife. But there's also the possibility that Vader's red Force lightning, much like everything else in his tortured perception of chaos, was merely a deception of the dark side. However, if we accept that Vader's red lightning was real and that it was powerful enough to incinerate a Sith Lord, then there's one final question. Why was it red and not blue? Force lightning actually came in many colors than the blue arcs that Palpatine, Tyrannus, and Rey used. The Night Sisters of Dathomir and Grandmaster Luke Skywalker were capable of projecting green versions of Force lightning, although Luke's originated from a very different place, and Darth Momin, the Sith spirit responsible for the creation of Vader's castle, was able to project yellow lightning. But Vader's was red, and there's only one other being that ever had been shown to project the color before, a celestial of Mortis known as the Sun. He was the living embodiment of the dark side of the Force, and only a few years earlier had managed to turn Anakin Skywalker away from the Jedi, long before Palpatine did. The Sun was the most powerful dark side user in the galaxy, and the one with the purest connection to the dark side. Those two reasons alone might have been the cause of the Sun's red lightning. Perhaps Darth Vader's ability to achieve red Force lightning was a sign of his mastery over the dark side. Or perhaps more likely, since his body was made whole again in the dark nexus of Mustafar, Vader probably achieved his full potential in the Force, surpassing Palpatine in the process and achieving red Force lightning. In the end, Vader's time in chaos is just another asterisk in the tragic life of the fallen Jedi. If he never was defeated on Mustafar and his physical body was whole, we would know for ourselves just how powerful former Knight Anakin Skywalker would truly become.